Hello and welcome to the Bucketlister Podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford, along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Bucketlister Podcast. I am your host Keith Crockford. And today I've got a really interesting topic because it's slightly different from what we've spoken about before. But today we have launched a new amazing trip. And I just wanted to talk about it in a little more detail and explain why we do it. Now, if you listened to the podcast a few weeks ago, I was chatting to Tom Lloyd about his recent trip to the Maldives. And in that podcast, we mentioned that we were going to be looking at a new trip and look at a more scuba diving orientated trip to the Maldives. Because our real Maldives trip, when we designed it, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't limited to just scuba divers. So we put more snorkeling in and didn't put scuba diving into that trip. Although there is the option in that trip to go scuba diving when you go onto the resort island. But we wanted to create a new trip that was scuba diving orientated and look at a liveaboard experience in the Maldives. Now, that's what we've done. And we've got a new trip launched today for 2026, where we've chartered a liveaboard to go scuba diving around the Maldives. Now, for some of you, that might be completely alien and you haven't got a clue what we're talking about. So what is a liveaboard? So a liveaboard is a boat that you join and you stay on for your whole week. And then you'll be diving off the liveaboard boat, touring around the Maldives, which I think is one of the best ways of seeing the Maldives, because obviously you're not just stuck on one island. You get to go and see multiple islands. And you get to tour around a much larger area. You see more of the atolls. The Maldives have got over 1,200 islands. Obviously, you're not going to get to go around all of that, but you do get to see a lot more from a boat than you would do if you just went and stayed on an island. Now, obviously, with a liveaboard, you do need to be a scuba diver already, although there is a common misconception that a liveaboard is only available for seasoned divers. But obviously, when you charter a liveaboard, it means that you've got the boat to yourself, so you can decide where you're going to go, what you're going to do. And that's one reason why we wanted to get a boat chartered rather than joining an existing boat. So we've booked a boat for the Bucket List company for the whole week, which will just have our clients on it. So our experience is going to cater for all experience levels. So whether you're open water or whether you're really an experienced diver, you will be able to come out, go diving, and the dives will have for different levels. So if you are open water, can only go to 20 meters, that's what you'll be restricted to, obviously, from your certification. But if you're more experienced, then you'll be able to go and do a different dive. However, saying that, we are adding the option onto this liveaboard experience for those open water divers that want to do their advanced, to be able to dive down to 30 meters. They can do that whilst they're on the boat. Now, the Maldives, there is a depth limit anyway of 30 meters. So even whether or not you can dive to 35 or 40, depending on your advanced certification, you're still going to be restricted to 30 meters in the Maldives. Obviously, as well, if you're a non-diver or you've got a partner that wants to come along, they're of course more than welcome as well. You can chill out, you can snorkel, you can relax on board the boat. And the trip is available to you as well. So you don't necessarily need to be a diver, but obviously if you want to go scuba diving, you are going to need to be certified at one level already. The other thing with liveaboards is there's two ways of running a liveaboard. Some companies will run a liveaboard where you dive from the liveaboard boat, whereas the boat that we've chartered has a separate dive boat where all the equipment lives, and you join that boat and dive from that boat every day. So the Dorney, as they call it, follows the liveaboard round, and then when it gets to go diving, you then go on to the dive boat and head out and go diving from there, which just means that the liveaboard becomes more of a dry boat. There's not wet kit everywhere. It gives you more space. It's a much nicer experience on the liveaboard, I think. Now, with the liveaboard, obviously there are generally twin rooms on board the boat. The boat that we've got will take a maximum of 16 clients. So we've got 16 spaces available on this trip. Some boats take 12, some boats take 28, but we think that actually a nice size group to take filled this boat perfectly. Other things about the boat are all your meals are included on the boat. So it's pretty much an all-inclusive trip in that sense. So if we look at the inclusions on a liveaboard, it includes your diving. Our trip, which is pretty standard, is a 7-night, 8-day trip. So you will arrive in the Maldives on the Sunday morning, join the boat on the Sunday lunchtime, afternoon, and head out on your journey. Now, with this trip, we've included the options to book the group flights so we can all fly out together, which just makes joining the boat a whole lot easier. But if you were coming from a different area or you wanted to book your own flights, then again, that is completely possible on this trip. But you need to make sure that your flight lands early in the morning on the Sunday, so you've got time to sort everything out and join the boat ready for the afternoon. The dives included are generally 3 dives a day. There's generally a dive on the first day, then 3 dives a day throughout, including some night dives as well. And then there will also be the option for a single dive on the final day as well. So looking at it, you're around about 17 or 18 dives included in the trip as well. Like I say, all your food's included. The only additions are going to be if you need kit rental for soft drinks and alcohol on board the boat, and tips for the crew as well. So everything else is included in within the cost of the liveaboard itself. So there's no real added extras to pay when you get there. Like I said, dive kit isn't included. If you need any dive kit, then we can get that booked and you can rent it whilst you're out there. If you have your own dive kit, then obviously you can take that with you. Looking at flights out there, we would be looking at booking a flight that gives you a plenty of luggage allowance. So you'd end up with 2 23-kilo bags. So if you did have your dive kit, you've got plenty to pack for both. Obviously, weights, tanks are all included in the price, but things like your BCD, your regulator, you probably wouldn't need a wetsuit, depending on how cold you get. When I was diving out there the other day, I was literally diving in board shorts and a rash vest. Obviously, you'll need fins. Quite a lot of people have a mask, and you'll need a dive computer as well. But like I say, all of those things can be rented fairly cheaply. And we would put that information out prior to the trip going so we can get all the equipment booked and make sure you've got everything that you need. What do you need to take with you on a liveaboard trip? Obviously, in the Maldives, hopefully it's going to be lovely and warm. And you're going to need your dive kit. Obviously, you're going to need your swim kit. But things like quick drying clothing, you're going to need reef safe sun cream. I would always take seasick medication with you, because, you might think you're a great sailor, but it's always best to make sure you've got it just in case, just to cover that motion of being on a boat for the whole week. Obviously, the liveaboard has a set route that it takes, but this can be changed, obviously, if the wind's in a certain direction, or, to make sure we can have a smoother journey as possible. It would, that they'll plan the route for us depending on the weather as well. You'll need to, I always take my refillable water bottle with me as well. Obviously, we don't want single-use plastics, especially in the Maldives. You'll need your dive certification. You'll need your dive insurance. And obviously, you're also going to need things like your personal toiletries, any personal medication that you need to take with you as well. But it really is a very basic trip in terms of what kit you need to take with you. The kit list will not be very big in terms of that. We've planned our trip to go in April, which is kind of on the shoulder season. We wanted to get a certain boat because it is a very, very nice boat. And obviously we've got to think about when that boat was available, and also the cost of the boat to try and make it as cheap as possible for our bucket listers. And obviously, there's two things going here. There's Maldives and there's boats. So it's kind of going to not be a cheap trip anyway. And when you look at how much a Maldives liveaboard trip costs, they can vary massively in terms of price. And I've looked around and seen some really not very nice boats, and I've seen some super luxurious boats. And looking at cost wise, you're rounding it about £200 to £750 per day on the boat, including the diving. It is sort of the different budgets. So when you work that out over an 8-day trip, you can be spending anything from, just under £2,000 right up to kind of £6,000-7,000 for a liveaboard experience. Obviously, ours is not at £6,000-7,000. Ours comes in more at the lower end. And by going in the shoulder season, we've got a really, really lovely boat. And the fact we've chartered the whole boat as well makes it cheaper for us as well. Obviously, cost varies as well on, what amenities the boat's got. Like I say, if it has got nice cabins, if it has got twin share, if it has got multiple share, if it has got a separate dive boat. Obviously, looking at how many dives are included in the package. And just to give you an idea on how good value a liveaboard experience is. When I was in the Maldives a couple of weeks ago, I went and did 3 scuba dives, and my bill was around about $260 for the 3 scuba dives from the island. So if you work that out, you're kind of looking at about $80 per dive. So if you're thinking about, well, actually, if I've got 18 dives, that's already $1,500-1,600 worth of cost just in the diving. Never mind being on the boat, never mind your food, never mind all those bits and pieces. So actually, the value you get by being on a liveaboard is really, really good, I think, personally. Like I say, there are additional costs. Gear rental is one of them. Some dive boats will allow you to dive on nitrox at an extra cost. So if you are nitrox certified, we can get that added for you beforehand. Like I say, if you wanted to do dive courses, we've added the advanced course on to the dive boat for any open water divers that wanted to think about doing their advanced. And it's coming in at £290 to get your advanced dive qualification, which actually is a really cheap price for an advanced course. So if you are in open water and you think, actually, I might as well extend it to a advanced, doing it whilst you're on the trip is a super great time to do it and get that sorted whilst you're out there. Excuse me. A liveaboard trip really is pretty much an all-inclusive holiday, but on a different level. And having the group on the boat and having the bucket list company take a boat ourselves and having our group on it, I think is going to be a really nice way of seeing the Maldives and enjoying that experience. You're going to gain access to more remote dive sites than you would do maybe if you stayed on an island, because they would just have access to the dive sites that were local to their island. But at the same time, you're also going to see loads of unspoiled beaches, and plenty of undisturbed marine life. And if we think about what are we going to see when we're on a liveaboard, and this is what always gets me excited, is the variation of what's there. Obviously there are plenty of colorful reefs, and I know if you've been diving in the Red Sea before, you'll have experienced this, but the reefs in the Maldives are just amazing. The marine life that are around the reefs, there is just so much of it. And yeah, I just think it's one of the nicest places to dive in the world. Obviously, there are plenty of rays. So there are manta rays, eagle rays. Obviously, depending on what time of the year you go into the Maldives will be what you see. There will be turtles. It's always amazing to go in, have the opportunity to dive with turtles and swim alongside turtles. There are various species of sharks, black tip, white tip, great reef sharks, even hammerhead sharks. And again, people think, diving with sharks, but they're more scared of you as a diver than you are of them. And it's just such an experience to be swimming around sharks. Obviously, like I say, we're going to be doing night diving as well. And the world just comes alive under there when you're on a night dive. It's just on another level with the colors. So yeah, I'm so looking forward to this trip. The schools of fish, are just on another level. There's clownfish, from everything from a clownfish to large tunas and, like I say, eagle rays. And until you get out there, if you've never dived in the Maldives, then this is the trip for you to get on. If you are already a diver, you're going to have the most amazing time on this boat and enjoy the experience. And if you've never been to the Maldives before, then what we thought about was, obviously the Maldives is a long way to travel. Obviously part of that is a huge cost of the trip. So what we've done is we've put an add-on onto the end of the trip for 4 nights if you wanted to go and stay at a local island. If you wanted to stay at a resort island. So we're going back and using Reethy Beach, which is where we went a few weeks ago, which is part of our real Maldives trip. And you will get back into port on Sunday. So the trip and the charter will be Sunday to Sunday. So if you're just opting to do the liveaboard trip, you can fly in, do the liveaboard trip. You get dropped back to Mali on the Sunday, and then ready for your flight home. But if you wanted to then add on the extension, you could do that, and you would take the seaplane down to Reethy Beach and have 4 nights on Reethy Beach. And we'll be getting off the boat early in the morning, around 9, half 9. So we would get a seaplane early in the morning, so you could enjoy the time on Reethy Beach. And then we would look at a late night flight coming back, so you could really get most of your time by doing the 4-night stay. There is also a dive centre on the island. So if you hadn't done enough diving on the liveaboard, you could then still do some more diving. But, there is plenty of facilities on Reethy Beach. Obviously you can chill out if you want to. There is a sports centre. There is a spa, there is a swimming pool. It's an all-inclusive. We'll add the all-inclusive package to it. So, again, once you've paid and booked it, unless you're doing additional activities, everything is included in the cost of that package. So that's the new trip. It's launching today. If being on a liveaboard sounds like your ideal of a dream holiday to the Maldives, then check out the show notes, because I will put a link in the show notes to it as well. I am super excited about this trip. I think it's going to sell out really quickly. We've had quite a lot of interest in it already, but it launches at exactly the same time as this podcast. So you can get yourself on it if you think that this trip is going to be of interest to you. Like, we're hoping to run more of them, but at the minute, this is just a one-off trip. And depending on how it goes, or depending on if we do more in the future. But we've got, in the Bucket List Company, obviously we've got a big group of divers who have all come along and done our Gozo trip. Maybe they've been and learnt to dive in Gozo. And that's the other option, is that this trip, if you're listening to this podcast going, I am not a diver, excuse me again. If you're thinking I am not a diver, this trip isn't until April 2026. So you've got time between now and then to get yourself qualified and get yourself to open water certification. And obviously we've got plenty of dates in the diary between now and April 2026 when this trip happens, to book onto one of our Gozo trips and head out and learn to scuba dive as well. So don't think, oh, well, I can't go on that trip because I'm not certified. Obviously, you can still go on it. You can go and snorkel if you want to, but obviously to make the most of this trip, you're going to want to do it as a scuba diver, but you've still got the chance to do that. I'm going to put loads of information in the show notes to this episode, with like blog posts about liveaboards, about the Maldives. I'll also put details in there about our Gozo scuba diving trip as well. So if you're thinking, actually, I would like to do that, but I'm not a diver, there is your option. But, if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. And this potentially could be the next bucket list trip for you. As you can tell, I am super excited, and I cannot wait to have this trip move forward. But that's it from me this week. I just wanted to let you know about this new trip and talk about what a liveaboard experience is. It might be that you might not want to join us, but it might be that you go and investigate liveaboards elsewhere, and that's fine. But I just wanted to tell everyone about this new trip. But if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to contact the office or contact me and ask away. As I said, that's it from me this week. I'll be back with another episode of the Bucketlister Podcast next week. But until then, thanks very much. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucketlister Podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.